Hi beautiful people, and welcome to another feeling around the dark room that is my mind. In October 12, 2017, I reviewed Dogmons.
Tá rolando clima, hein?
A late product of the Mon mania that spread through the world. While some take the Pokemonic premise and create a version with something new, others try even today to create friendly monsters using gimmicks or simply pretending there's never been anything like it before, or that they just need to throw some similar premise with no effort. Even I have a little RPG world centered around collectible creatures that wage war. In that adventure, a fly puked. The idea of having an invincible battalion of monsters is very tempting, and with a more diversified comic book market trying to establish itself in the 90s and 2000s, with titles such as Nectar, Amazing Muchachas, and Lagarto Negro, or Black Lizard, trying something more like Image or Marvel, and other older characters like Cranium trying to do something more like DC, there was a place to create Brazilian Digipockets. And I'm still trying to get a physical copy of Gamemon. The big problems in Brazilian productions always were, as I see it, the lack of quality and using ideas like you have to see it because it's Brazilian or it doesn't have to be original because it's for kids. That never works, no matter the case. It's really refreshing seeing that today there's a market for independent comics much more willing to maintain itself. Most of the time. Even Dogmons is being redone in comic form and with more effort put into it. Of course, Dragodog is a tad like Feldic, but it just depends on how they'll use the ideas. I guess I'll have to take a look one of these days. Can't be worse than the reader suggestions in Monica's Gang, the first arc of Dogmons, which will tell the beginning of Alex, Chris, and Nando's adventures in Kenny's 2B. Where they start discovering the mysteries that involve the origin of humanity. The origin of humanity? You're gonna say the Vern created the monsters Yugi the Pharaoh had to imprison together with the Hawk people? Or that aliens implanted spirits in volcanoes and atomic bombs? No, no one would believe that. Follow my socials. Right on the cover, we can see problems common in comics of the time. First, we have the influence of manga not completely absorbed, with pencil closer to that on the eyes for instance, but the line they form kind of floating, bigger head and thinner arms, but the elements don't blend well, like Sagittar from He-Man. It looks like Digimon style a bit. Characters in child puppet style, certainly having characterization in their details, but practically stick figures without them. Here, however, we have less characterization, and what we do have is a little weak and confusing. The guy from Pernambuco has sunglasses on his forehead all the time, except when in a car and in a convention hall, out of the sun. And the kid from Rio Grande do Sul has an everlasting boo-boo on his face, so he'd have to have a band-aid on. And he has a skateboard. He's gonna try to make some maneuvers and maybe fall flat on the ground? No, the only one that stands out a bit is the one from São Paulo dressed as Urkel, who at least differentiates amidst the other characters with such simple clothes, both the main ones and the background ones. And it's not as if she's wearing that to be changed. And we have, a native Brazilian. A native Brazilian who doesn't want anything to do with conflicts because peace, nature, and animals are human. And I imagine some people are going to say this can't be negative because pacifism isn't negative. There's a concept still not very propagated in Brazil that using a caricature of a group is in poor taste and dangerous because it propagates harmful stereotypes. If you've never heard of blackface, welcome to the internet! Enjoy the cat videos, don't follow anybody's opinion blindly, and don't make any deals with this guy.
Coca-Cola wants your soul.
These uses are commonly marked with face, such as blackface, yellowface, whiteface, and it's applicable to any group, even if it's not ethnic. A criticism posed against the Big Bang Theory is that it would be nerdface.
Ample hindquarters suggest successful childbearing. My arousal is a classic evolutionary response.
And reduce nerd culture in the same way that many Urkelian characters before them. Not that I agree with that last one. Even Cloud Atlas' case is complicated, and I certainly don't think Scarlett Johansson can't play a character because she's not Asian or not trans. It's been years of these communities trying to get more of their culture and history told, but now half a dozen imbeciles start screaming "I didn't like it" with no argument, and suddenly all that was achieved starts to die because no one understands the difference between using and interpreting. Yes, Jay Sherman can eat goats, be yellow for The Simpsons, and be an Alina doll, goddammit! And while I don't think mere makeup itself is blackface, it is rare to get one of these without the representation being purely based on stereotype. No, it's not a recent problem. You just need to look at this girl to see the problem. We have makeup and accessories to establish her origin, but she's wearing leggings and a tight shirt, including a pose to show the line of her ass. Not that I expected a realistic representation. I can't put one of these on YouTube today, much less in 2001. But this is far from a generalization of a native. Extremely limited attitude. Clothes that wouldn't be common for kids at a time, much less for natives. It's literally guessing. Natives are people who are always calm and commune with nature, as if natives don't wage war, don't have philosophies or mythologies, or various forms of expression like any other people. She doesn't even have a necklace on the cover. Necklaces are one of the most common things for natives. And we can't forget the Brasimon. I almost did. We have a crab with somewhat disjointed legs, maybe related to the guy from Atlas, a generic condor with hands like those of a bat, and eyes up to the ears. Gummon's cousin, Chewing Gummon, at least they altered more than the color, and an ankylosaur with the power to challenge proportions, together with his Brasidestin, who's kinda floating, maybe because the sun exploded behind them. And before I go into the comic itself, it's worth mentioning that this is a super production from the people who brought you Dragon War. Both were published together in 2001, and the art in both is done by Danielle HDR, also responsible for the script in Brasimon. Why is that relevant? Because the cover calls this Dragon War. Obviously, Mythos wasn't paying a lot of attention. Besides, attributions are a bit confusing in general. While the ad for Dragon War attributes the art to Daniel HDR, Rafael Goy and Celso de Oliveira also get the same credit on the comic. So I suppose they might have been assistants? In Brasimon, there's a credit for character design for Marcos Pinto on the inside of the cover, besides two other people contributing with drawing. Maybe they were thinking of focusing the attention on the artist who had worked with famous publishing houses, but it still seems somewhat odd. And then we have an opening card. That's a common way to increase a comic's page number to what's needed. Shaman number 1 does it in the start, Dragon War does it in the end. Honestly, for an independent comic or something getting started, it doesn't seem to be a big problem. The differences in the pencils at the same time don't look that big. I prefer this one to the covers actually. You can say it's less polished, but it's more consistent with the story. Of course, Rosa is more out of proportion, maybe to align with the others, but Yara has a necklace. The others are less out of their size, and even with the grouping being more basic, it's better than a cover with subgroups. What is a bigger problem is them revealing who was behind Master Hand and Crazy Hand. I'm not saying I expected a well-developed villain or an elaborate plot, but I honestly didn't expect the thin chin and pencil-thin mustache. We start introducing the 4 protagonists, each one with 2 pages for exposition about their place of origin and situation. The first is the girl from São Paulo, and we already see one of the problems with the comic's writing. What is it, Mom? Your father is finishing his breakfast. Oh no, is something missing? There must be. Calm down, dear. Yeah, girl, yeesh. In a moment, you go from calm to I gotta do something. Okay, it's not a very concerned face. Inconsistent expressiveness is another problem the comic has. But this is clearly someone trying to do something manga-esque without fully understanding why it's done. On top of that, the father that was finishing breakfast is still sitting at the table with a blank notebook for some reason.
No!
Still drinking coffee and without his lab coat. And we have some inconsistent hands, with the kid being more Digimon-y with her giant hands, but the parents having small hands, besides the father's wrist breaking just from carrying the daughter's suitcase. What the hell did you put in there? And we finish finish with Tatita, the ankylosaur, showing she can be more expressive than all of them. But the reaction makes as much sense as her owners because she thinks she might be forgotten after these static panels. Rhythm is another problem the comic has. The next presentation for the Rio Grande do Sul kid is more expressive, and it even makes more sense when it comes to that. You almost crash and burn in school, keeps being a pain in the ass asking your dad and me to go to this event, and now plane ticket bought, hotel booked, and you're playing video games? And you haven't even packed, boy! But it's kinda disjointed, with action lines in what would be a comedic moment, and this is immediately followed by his older brother in what would be a sad moment. David had a Brasimon, but it went missing in the last event. We think he died.
Bastard.
And how to better show sadness than someone smiling and then they're back? And I only know it was supposed to be sad because it's the loss of someone, but since the script is still that direct exposition and they aren't being lazy, I don't know if he's closing himself off, if he just got sad, or if he's just running from the conversation, because there is no visible change. And in none of these situations would someone really say this. This sounds like sarcasm, which suggests it was so bad that he'd never let his brother go to an event like the one that costed him his Brasimon. That's without considering the brother himself shouldn't consider it safe, much less the parents. It seems that no one cares about this particular Brasimon and no one thinks a criminal that takes an animal can attack someone. Mas claro, isso na verdade deve ser um pouco de foreshadowing para o retorno desse bicho em Brasimon 4, o reino dos Brasimons de cristal.
Give me paper, something to write with.
Promogo, Karandash!
3 horas depois.
And then we go to Amazonas, which is presented like this. But, what? Until now, they introduced no advanced technology. In the rest of the comic, there will be no other robots. This is just here, out of nowhere, for no reason. Vacuuming the dust it is blowing off itself on a dirt road. Anyways, we're presented to the floating head of Yara, talking to Rosa and saying her parents don't accept competitions, so her grandma gives her a necklace. When the spirits of dispute came to torment the spirits of compassion, the Indians and the Portuguese waged the War of Manaus between 1723 and 1728. Seriously, how in the hell do you confuse this with this? And spirits? Couldn't it be Tupã? I know very little, but Tupi-Guarani mythology was already well known by the time I was in school in the previous century. And finally, we see some more technology out of nowhere in an Audi RSQ, which is taking the Pernambuco kid to the airport. My son's first convention. I'm so proud. Sure, proud. With your happy eyes and your angry and attentive eyebrows. You and Lango got nice and ready for the disputes, I gather. Okay, you don't need to exclamate, Mr. Rock Eyebrow Lee. Wait, Lango? Is Lango Islands in Pernambuco? I'm just sorry for this thing. Kinda cross-eyed, eternally slouching, and apparently a fan of Cameo. What matters is that I'm going to get with the girls. Dude, what are you, 12? Even if he's 14, it's a little early for him to have experience, don't you think? And then we see Mundimon Con 2001 in a 2-page spread with such renowned attendants as Lara Croft, Porco Rosso, Cecil Turtle, Ryu, Vega Bison, Bart Simpson, a proto-Herculoid, Indiana Jones pointing at a cross-eyed crocodile next to the Danonino Ice Kid, Jessie, the Saotomi, Vegeta, and even Ash, Satoshi, Ketchum-All, and Misty came to see the most fantastic of the Brasimon, Kao Kioskimon. One day all shall have it. And what's a Mundimon? I assume it's like a Brasimon, but from outside Brazil? We all know Brazil isn't a part of the world. The next 2 pages are 4 panels with the Brasidestined, and this is the first positive thing I can say about the comic. They don't interact, are in different positions, and you can kinda see they fit in a group even before they meet, besides being presented in the same order. So the 4 getting close is shown in a more subtle way. The content is still quite empty. Like, why would a stand sell only food and the other only drinks? Assuming MAV and Zoom aren't literally the only things being sold on those stands. The layout has both bad moments, like some oddly placed speech bubbles, and good moments, like small corners for the location locations in the presentations, for instance. It's really something noteworthy in a comic that doesn't seem to have any chance of being good. It's also worth mentioning that not only does Dragon War exist in this world, there's also a version of Oh My Goddess, Harry Potter, and Piccolo is a part of Retro City. Not quite what I meant, and that Lango, with eyes wide open, is somewhat disturbing. Dude, don't be Pepe Le Pew. Nobody likes that. I think. And just to show how bad the writing is, are registrations here? Yeah, well, I defended Daniel HDR in the last review for being in a dead end and participating in the dragon plagiarism. Here he is credited for the script. That doesn't mean he was the only one making the story. Of course not. But I already find it difficult to think of the character designs coming from one person and the script from another. It's not impossible, but in a comic based on creativity, you'd think the creativity would come from the same group, be it one or multiple people. At least it seems less likely that someone would create a character, have ideas for it, and then the story would come from another source. So, you decided to come out of the bushes, girl, and brought this little thing with you. It's Boitata! No, it's just that the native that was raised without conflict has an arch nemesis. You came to sign your little pet up? Well, I think he's very plain, among so many others that are so valuable. Even more so with my dear Kyuri competing. And did you know she's Voldemort Snake's cousin? And you're ugly, and you're silly, and you're full of boogers. The skateboarder tangles his skateboard in Luigi's overalls, basically breaking every law of physics. To begin with, she would have felt the wheels across her back until they got to the cross straps. Then they don't realize it, somehow, and instead of the skateboard falling or hanging from them, he actually manages to get her off her feet, even if he's no longer holding the skateboard. Not even São Paulo Mon or Rio Grande do Sul Mon believe it. I wonder what a Pacifica Mon would be like. And while the skateboarder and Agnes finish their random encounter, Sunglasses talks to the announced victim, who has a rare blue macaw Brasimon. So it's like Pokemon, where the monsters are the animals. Well, none of the other Mons has a named race. There's no Canarymon, no red-crested Cardinalmon, especially because it ain't Digimon. What, you thought there'd be answers here? Of course not! And immediately after, the wild villain appears, saying he needs to get that Brasimon for himself, while apparently changing back to his baby stage. And then starts a mundimon show, where they seem to exhibit the skills of their monsters to be judged, like Pokemon coordinators, who were introduced in 2002. Brasimon is from 2001. They introduced exhibitions before Pokemon. Oh, and we have a grown-up Jimmy 5, clearly before becoming a despot, a judge a little too smiley.
Life's been good to me.
And a presenter wearing short clothes who's there for no reason. Why is there a presenter with a microphone? Because anime, of course. Showing the diversity of the world? No, what for? Well, the four introduce themselves to each other because it's in the script, and while they talk to one another and watch the presentation, the more than obvious villain monaps the blue macaw. I mean, really, he even has the chin, the mustache, and the hair.
I thought it looked distinguished.
And for some reason, his shadowy hands seem to come from in front of the carioca, but are inverted as if they were coming from behind her. After assuring from a bird with Zock's tail, the girl says she was robbed and the three of them decide to help her, because we wouldn't have a comic otherwise. What if the stolen Brasimon was me? They decide they need an aerial view, and Kero goes to stage 3. Explanation? Explanation. First, they mount the giant bird and say, from what the girl said, we're heading the same way as the car, let's keep an eye for a G. No, she didn't say anything about a particular direction. Then, after a bit of peeving between Sunglasses and Urko about each other's hair, they show the Carioca girl is there, and ask her if she can recognize the car. Yep. The coherence doesn't last one page. They get to a prison where many Brasi, Mundi, Sopamons are kept. I wonder what a Soupmon would be like. In fact, there's a Tom and Jerry era Catmon with a floating eye. Hey, a Kermitmon next to a Beermon who had the more colorful feathers plucked. No wonder it's making that face. You don't get it. I've seen things. Like Tiger, a canine monster with a feline's name. Actually, the Japanese name is Raiga. This was an obscure joke. Stay tuned for a nonsense joke. The skateboarder sees a Brasimon that looks like his brothers, and imagine that we have a second species, a howler monkey. But they are interrupted, while not doing anything, by 4 Master Rancher Brasidestined of Evil. And the battles begin. Kellogg punches Caro while his owner says he had a similar Brasimon, but it was weak, and he gave up on him. Psst. Yeah, you. I think he's evil. And the opponent being from Rio Grande do Sul seems to be relevant, for some reason. I don't even know how he knows where he's from. Did they know each other? So, Caro goes to level 2, and if I knew what that was, it might make a difference. And if it's an effort, wouldn't level 3 be more appropriate? Since we have seen him get there, whatever there is, and then he the enemy, want some roast chicken? A little cruel, don't you think?
If you hit a bird with a brick, it'll stop moving.
And to the surprise of all, besides coordinators before Pokemon, Yara has a story. Nadia says her brother isn't the same because of Yara, and that Nadia's father wants those lands since forever. It's not well presented. It's 2 panels. While the character's presentations take 2 pages and has no content, this could have been a full story. Kinda standard and cliche, but a story. Boitatamon grabs chewing gum on. We have a lot in common, Rosa. None of us understand how marching fish work. But let's see which of us can hold their breath longer. Ironically, it's Nosepass. Breathing or not, Curia, both you and me, we need to keep listening, right? We're both amphibians. But the rhythm's going to get you. I don't know. This is a perfect example of this red face. Pink River Dolphinmon makes an effort to try to pretend it is a pacifist, no matter how out of context or unreal it gets. Depending on the version, Boto drowns his victims or hypnotizes women to have sex with him. But it can't get worse, right? Once again, huh? But this time there's no woman involved, boy. Fool. You lack hatred. You thought he was just a boy fascinated by girls, bragging about it, but maybe never having been with one? No, the comic suggests he's thought of girls for ages and has been in fights because of it.
It makes my testicles want to drop.
Your breeder still hasn't taught you how to use your claws right.
Your sensei teach you how to fight with spear, huh?
This goes for you too, Shiko. Who are you going to show off to, huh? He hasn't just thought of girls for a long time. He has used his Pernambucamon to impress girls. In a world full of municipalitymon rangers! Maybe it's just an insult, but it also suggests they could feel bad with it, so it's based on a real problem. And how would that work? There's no indication that Lango is rare, so it's not like an expensive car. There's no moment he treats Lango in any special way, so it's not like a puppy. What's the appeal? Doesn't matter. We have more insanity on the way. Scopy, Sting, just to humiliate him, Scope. It must be humiliating if you can poison him without breaking his shell. This is a level of laziness so high. The poison isn't shown, but the stinger doesn't pierce the shell. Ideally, the sting would be in an unprotected point. That even implied the adversary is skilled. But no, how can we show violence in a battle? Even so, you could show liquid and suggest it is absorbed by the shell. You could crack the shell a little and suggest it hits the animal under the exoskeleton. But this way, you're saying Ripley came out in that robot and that's not considering that... Lango, no! Don't sleep! No! Because poison, sleep and paralysis are all the same thing.
Quick, get her on Panacea.
And all of that doesn't matter, because the rules that were never explained are going to be used again. Stage 3, Lango! Let's neutralize the effect of the poison! Now! And Krabby becomes a Groudon, magically not having his health issues anymore. Who doesn't know how to use his claws here? I'd say... How the hell can that do an uppercut? When he changed stages, the poison Lango lost its effect. Did you get that, kids? Was it clear enough? There are status, but they don't work if you digivolve your Telefang. And Brasimon and Mundimon have stronger stages. And the Order of a Teledestin can transform the Tamagotchi if he has high enough loyalty. Even if the card has been created right before the fight. Even if fallen, it will rise again. The Dog Force will digifuse you and take away specifically what's bad because...
You always win when you are good.
The girl from Karate Kid 4, the only one allowed to be intelligent, starts screaming at her dinosaur never found in Brasimon to go to stage 3, but she's afraid, running from Arnold from Tiny Toons and... I'm afraid to live... This must be the only funny panel here, and I think it's by sheer accident. This animal is legitimately chibi. The dog looks like an exaggeration you could see on a cartoon. In case this wasn't clear so far, one of the big problems with Brazilian products like this is that the ideas are not taken seriously. Everything is planned enough to have a draft, and everything else seems to be decided on the spot. This wouldn't be bad for a first version. Someone that saw this written down would probably say, you don't need 2 pages for these intros. Are you going to put something more here? If not, do them in one and use the space for the battles. They should be more interesting. Also, Tatita of the Titanic Tees has 5 legs in this panel. I forgot more than once she was supposed to have 6 legs, but I never thought legs were missing until now, nor that she didn't bend her knees. It's so weird seeing someone drawing 6 knees and never bending them. Stop being a scaredy cat. Oh, I never thought of that. Thanks. The Ankylosaur becomes a not at all practical thing that would likely tip over easily and creates an earthquake. That makes Arnoldmon become Dog Derpymon. Detail: this is the first panel where the evolution looks really much bigger than the previous version. On the next page we'll see that all of them became giant, but since they are all loose in space, this change that could have been interesting looks minimal. The thief's douche of a son alerts his dad that he needs to let the Rancor loose. I mean Tron, who looks more intimidated and unconscious and behind bars than loose, where the proportion makes it seem like it would be a fair fight. On the next page he seems a bit bigger than them, while knocking them with 1 punch each. Meanwhile, finally, the little girl finds her blue macaw Brasimon, because the others were so similar, right? And as soon as she says she'll get him out, Lucia is teleported to the battle. Not that we could see if the cage is there with this lazy background. In fact, you can't actually know where they are in the house. I assume the battle is happening in the entrance hall. They come in, see Brasimon the Digipocket, and are welcomed by their poorly thought out reflections. That is, their reflections. But there isn't any indication of their surroundings, just the gorilla's cage. If Baru's cage was there, there'd be no reason finding and releasing him took so long, especially because we don't see him being let out. If it wasn't far from there, why wouldn't she be back almost instantaneously? Something doesn't fit unless you think Gorilla from Tangamandapyomon was there, standing still and waiting for her. Boa Hancockly with his Grosinger X neck. And why would Tangamandapyo make a cyborg gorilla? Then they tied him on an asteroid and threw him into space together with the Mexican space program. Baru elevates his red-hot breaker Kundalini to Alpha stage. I assume a stage higher than 3, a blue state if you will. I'll use an attack to calm him down, Lucia. He didn't level up normally. This will revert it. And without any visual indication of the attack, he goes back from Rosé stage to watery ketchup from a bar stage. Look, the poor thing was altered with artificial parts. And, let's be fair, a cyborg gorilla is a good idea for a major enemy. Even more so if he got there artificially, which seems to be what they wanted to do. But if calming him down reverts him, he isn't in alpha stage because of the artificial parts. He doesn't show any weapons or anything like that. He beats them as much with the mechanical arm as with the other one, so he's strong by himself. The parts change with him so they look more like a trait he has, not tools put onto him. They abandoned the other mundimon because they must have called the police, making jokes while flying on the blue macaw, and the son convinces his father to make a tournament so he can have his revenge against them, and the dad can get the mundimons for himself. I know, it's kind of cliche, but it is such a cliche. It is extremely cliche, and all the fans know that it has to be really well done to be interesting. And why are you making that face? Don't pretend you didn't know that. Of course there would be a tournament. The two comics, of course, didn't have the impact Mythos wanted, but I'm not surprised. They don't develop their stories. Here, more than in Dragon War, no part of these creatures existing is explained, much less demonstrated. The creatures shown are not particularly inventive. The premise of being based in Brazilian folklore applies to one Brasimon, maybe two if this is a national bird poorly drawn, and everything that's understandable between big quotation marks is deduced by comparing with mons created before. And that's not considering the smaller details that I haven't mentioned. The São Paulo girl's bow disappears, for one panel the floor is made of reticule, possible references aren't well done enough to be sure this is a chocobo, Nadia is shown not just in spandex but with a snake wrapped around her, an image that's not exactly for kids, the onomatopoeia for the impossible fall is literally plot, despite that not leading anywhere, there seems to be an X-Men and a tiger at the exhibition, the judge's crazy hair changes, this rabbit seems to be more or less robotic depending on the panel, and that confuses Benny Rabbit, and when Bit the Bodogmon is presented, his eyes look like tubes turned inwards. It's not a bad execution of good ideas. It's a lazy execution of bad ideas. Even today, the Brazilian market treats readers as children, both literal and figuratively, and nothing less than the biggest names can create something and keep it for some time, which is not a guarantee for quality. There's craniums and lunchtimes out there. Support the indie comics you like, and they might get a movie just like Doutrinador is getting this year. And if you enjoyed it, please like, share, and sub to the channel. No one would. Brasimon is shit. Brasimon is shit, but that's not what I meant to say. Yeah, you. I think he's evil. And my cat just ruined the shot. The fuck? I've been here over an hour getting just these shots. And she ruined it. But she's so cute, I can't be mad at her. She's a pretty little one. It's a break. A bikini. Which will tell the beginning of Alex, Chris, and Nando's adventures in Kenny's 2B. Ironic, I'm trying to talk about Kenny's and dogs are barking. Boa Hancockley with his Grosinger ZX.